Everyone, this is Dan Wynn, and I'm here with Alex Kim with Three Kings Public Affairs. Thanks for being here, Alex.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Dan, for the opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure. We got connected through the Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce, and you're like the Korean Kevin Bacon. You know everybody.
Yes, I love Kevin Bacon movies.
But obviously, it took you a long time to get you where you're at. And right now, you run Three Kings Public Affairs. But even before that, tell me a little bit about your background, growing up, and a little bit about your schooling.
Sure. I'll start out, in college. So I went to UC Irvine in the 90s, and I majored in biology, not thinking I could be a nice, good Asian American, please my parents to go to, medical school or any type of health field. And during my sophomore year in college, when sometimes you have unexpected things that happen to you personally, or in my case, it was actually in a very local, but also social change that happened, particularly as a Korean American. I was born here in Los Angeles, and being LA has always had the highest population of Korean Americans. I wasn't really too involved in the community, but I knew from, just speaking to enough friends in college and nonprofits. Then the LA riots happened in the April of I believe, yes, 1994. I remember it well. And I'm sorry, 1992. And a lot of my friends' parents' businesses were burned down. And if people don't recall, it's the Rodney King case when you had LAPD officers. I think they're mostly all Caucasian, just beating up a black motorist. And in that black community, it's always been an issue with that. And for some reason, Koreans got in the middle, and people fail to believe there was an incident 2 months before, or is it 2 weeks, 2 months before that incident, where you had a Korean liquor store owner shooting a black teenager. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of anger, right? A lot of miscommunication and things like that. So anyways, the anger of the black community and the mainstream, pretty much black community, just burning down Koreatown. They actually went into Koreatown right next to South LA. So, anyways, that really caused concern for me. Wow, on TV, I see people, the news, really focusing on not only black and white, the anger there, but also Koreans, allegedly shooting people, but they were defending because they're defending their own stores because the cops wouldn't come. And it was something where they were defending their lives. And I didn't like the way they portrayed Korean Americans, and I decided to add to my major to political science. That's something that's close to it. If you want to learn about political leadership, and that changed my trajectory to enter my life into politics. So after graduation, I really focused on civic empowerment issues. I never imagined going from being a doctor, or, in my case, a physical therapist, because I was going through training for that, to going to focusing on working with legal groups. Dan, yourself, you're an attorney, but working with social justice issues, and it led me to go to law school actually for a year, and didn't make the cut, but didn't stop me. Led me to work for the mayor's office of the city of Los Angeles to represent Koreatown, the very heart that was affected, not including South Los Angeles. And that's what led me to life of public service. When you have passion, and that's what led me to ultimately have my own career in public affairs business. It's pretty much the same thing, except you're working for yourself instead of for elected office. And I created a vast network of people from the business sector to contribute to the nonprofit sector to, government. And that's what I learned. There was a lack of leadership. There was a vacuum. And as you know, as an Asian American, in particular Korean American network, you had a lot of leadership in the first generation among the local faith-based community, a lot of church pastors, a lot of business leaders in the legal world, medical world, and all that. But it was pretty much absent in the government world. I'm not talking about working for government, but representing the political officials. There was no Koreans, let alone no Asian Americans in LA, the LA region, LA County, not a single Asian American elected at the local offices. So that's something that we wanted to fix. And now we're 2020. We have in the city of Los Angeles we have 2 Asian Americans, two Korean Americans out of 15 council seats, and they're like, wow, you Koreans have really why Koreans? Why not Filipino, Chinese Americans that were more numerous? It's because what happened in LA riots, it created the bumper crop of folks like myself to switch their majors or focus from their past trajectory into different, the common medical, engineering, legal, or very reputable industries, but something that doesn't pay well. It's always not about the money. No, it may pay well. I actually have arguments for that, to support that, but not have focus on earning money, but public service, right? And that's something where it's difficult among Asian American communities, because when people back in the home country in Asia, where politicians were known to be very ruthless and corrupt, right? That, oh, my kid's going to be a corrupt, and, I have to dispel that. Yeah. I mean, there's always bad apples in any industry, but in America, this is what civic empowerment is about. If you want to get your voice heard as a minority group, to learn what the African Americans have done to help the minority communities, the Civil Rights Act. And, people have to learn these things that Asian Americans to realize if you want to, you can't get your rights heard until you have to speak up. And that's opposite of Asian culture, right? Confucianism, right? Yeah. The nail that gets stuck out gets hammered back in. Well, we have to reverse that thinking, where you have to be that nail that sticks out to also help others, nails that are embedded in the corruption, to remove those nails too, to also stand out as well, and have solidarity to create your own new house or new society. So that's something that's been a lifelong goal. That's why I started Three Kings Public Affairs, because it wasn't enough to work for politicians, and I ended up working for Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger of this great state of California, after working for the mayor's office and for 7 years, and learned about state politics. And then afterwards going back to City Hall to work for David Rue. Did a 5-year stint working for a corporation at Southern California Gas Company. But again, that was kind of like a government affairs role, helping the company out to navigate the politics, and became a corporate philanthropist there, to helping the Asian American community. That's my passion. It wasn't my intention to just originally just focus on helping Korean American communities affected by the riots. But then I thought about it. Oh my God, this is among not just Koreans, but also all Asian Americans affected, right? The perception of Koreans or Asians not giving back, and I want to dispel those myths, but became grander to help out all different minority groups that are underserved, whether you're Black, Latino, Korean, of that, even LGBT network. My mind expanded so much working in government, because we have to focus on the common thread and not constantly divide up that pie that we're all seeking, right? So that's a rundown. And of course, I mentioned you about Pepperdine. I felt that I needed to get a more broader education to understand the business community as well, to not so much business, but learn how to manage people. It was actually a leadership degree for me.
Okay.
going part-time at Pepperdine. And to really utilize that network, Pepperdine is one of the largest networks that I've learned in leadership. And I'm constantly using that to help leverage that talent pool to help out the people that I know, whether it's you, Dan, the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce, the various different leadership groups I'm involved with. And with having my own business, I'm able to have more of a freedom to network more and not be limited to working for a single elected office. So I hope that's a long-winded introduction, but I think it's the kind of rough big picture, and then you could proceed to ask more, narrowed in to which topic you want to focus on.
Sure. It seems like, the LA riots were kind of the triggering mechanism for you to change paths, right? From biology, then adding political science. I did have a relative who he is he loves foreign languages. So we grew up close together, and many Asian families, like he wanted to major in Spanish. His parents would not let him major in Spanish.
Espanol, no.
Yeah,
okay.
His parents would not let him major in Spanish, so he had to add something else if he's going to do Spanish. So he did. He got an accounting degree, and so he became a CPA. But it doesn't stop, because I think this type of story is very common, right? We're all doctors, engineers, lawyers, pharmacists, in those areas. But sometimes in life, part of our story thread, there's an event that happens in our life that changes the trajectory of our life, and then sends it off to a different course. Now, how did your parents take that? It was, I know it's a little bit different. It's not completely a 180 as far as what the major was, but you were adding on, right? So did you do a double major, or did you actually do political science instead of biology? And how did your parents take that?
Well, when I took on political science, I was trying to get it as a major, but I was short a few classes. Part of it is because I made the move at such a late time. Mm-hmm. Even though I ended up going an extra year, and partially it's not because partially because I had more classes for public science, but also there were a lot of fifth-year seniors that were impacting the classes, so I couldn't get in, so I decided to go an extra month, right, an extra quarter. Since the UC takes a 3-month quarter system, and that was all right. So I minored it in poli-sci ultimately. And the way my parents took it, they thought, "Oh, that's fine. At least you have a bio major, so I can use that." And poli-sci, whatever. I don't know what that is.
Is it really a science, right?
yeah, it's a science. Took the backdoor approach and said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm just going to take these extra classes. It's good back then I used that as an argument to boost up my GPA from my bio classes, because I wasn't doing well in some of the chemistry classes. But I think ultimately my parents did support me. My father, he worked in politics too, and back in Korea, he actually worked for the president.
Okay.
One of the past presidents of Korea. So he knew roughly what the job entailed. But ultimately, he still, to this very day, said, "Oh, there's a medical school waiting for you." I want a doctor in the family. Unfortunately, it's not me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go do some online and get some sort of doctor degree for something. We'll see. But ultimately, my parents were, my father was supportive. My mother, she's of course every good mom. It's like, "Oh, Alex, when are you gonna get married? I'm not married. What's going on here?" So, because people don't know this. When you work in politics or work at elected offices, you work on the weekends. You work in almost every evening, doing public speaking, and time does fly, and it is very common, or not uncommon. It's a double negative, but it's very common to see people that work in politics that ultimately, make sacrifices for not having families or not being married full time. But to them, it's not, and to me too, it's not a sacrifice. It's actually you are contributing to society. You're giving more of yourself, right? for the common better good, you know? So it's two ways to think of it that way, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, they say most people aren't happy in their careers because they're not following their passion, right?
Yeah.
Because either they themselves convinced because of their parents or their friends or that, you know, ultimately they want more security. And there's no judgment upon that, but of people that are, there's studies done, when you follow your passion for your career, they're the happiest, you know? I mean, this is a very, very important discussion now because of the high rates of incidents of depression, suicide. You know, ultimately, it's important to really do an analysis. I think, you know, all drug use and all these things. Why do people why do they self-medicate, right? Is it because they're unhappy with their position in life? Are they focused on not making enough money? But ultimately, you ask them, it's not that. It's more about they're not fulfilling their passion, right? Whether it be let's say if they want to do, they're an accountant, but they want to be an artist, right? They want to sing, or they're you know, they're a lawyer and they want to do podcasting. Do something, you know, it's a valid thing, you know. You have that career that you have to passion. I was encouraging with people that, oh, hold on a second, it's my brother. Hey, he's coming in. So I'm doing a podcast for him. It's my brother. I'm doing this from my parents' home.
Okay.
And anyways, what was I saying? So following their passion, and I tell people to, you know, there's a way where you don't have to quit your job. If you don't like your job, you could still, but you need it because of, the number one is because of benefits, healthcare benefits for their families. You know, that's why they can't quit, you know. But you could always have a second career, but you don't have to retire for it. You could do it concurrently, right? Whether you want to volunteer at church, you want to just, I mentioned about art. Take some art classes, right? Volunteer. That people want free art, or do some multimedia like you're doing now, right? To express your opinion, and that adds value-added things to it. But it's also could help out you with your career and your next move, ultimately, right? Yeah. And I know many people that use, you know, social media, for instance, like what you're doing now, to fulfill their passion and also jump into another career. It may not be social media related, but some other industry, whether it's aerospace or, you know, in the retail world, you know, business, doing your own coffee shop, food trucks, or so many different types of careers where you don't have to work in an office anymore. You could work. Look at both of us, right? Yeah. I'm calling from my home. My home is my business. That's my office. I have two offices, right? One physical office with my family, and another one with here at my parents' home, and then I have another place, right? It's virtual. I could do it from a coffee shop. Yeah. So people have to understand that we live in a new type of economy where you don't have to be stuck in one job. And in the area of politics is very important, or you work with politicians or government folks, that being not tied down to the office and being able to meet with them at their offices and not worried to be on and off the clock by a certain time. You know, it's a great freedom, and living out my passion. You know, I've never been so happy, you know, because it's never been about the money. It's about being able to serve in a better capacity without your boss yelling at you.
Yeah,
I'm my boss, you know.
Yeah. You know, you fire yourself, and you can only blame yourself. That's
right.
Pros or cons, however you want to think about it. And you know, I was actually much likely when I first started college, I was on track to become a physical therapist.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but I took one anatomy class, and I said, forget this. I'm not gonna look at bones and muscles all my life. And so I scratched that, and I switched over my major to business. So for you, what was it like? You know, when you finished school, did you jump right into public service right away, work for the mayor's office, and then and from there, I mean, did you have a little bit of experience in connecting with during school? You know, connecting with public service, things like that. How did you get into public service from school?
Yeah, and I've spoken about this to students, how I got in there. So thanks for the question. So there are two ways I always tell people to, if you want to consider doing government work or working for the public, is one is through campaigns where you get involved in the political campaign, and you know what usually what's going on now with the presidential campaign. You see people volunteering, people behind them, what they're doing. That's what they do. You just go there, and most of the time it's not paid. You just volunteer, and so I feel bad for the folks that were on the Andrew Yang campaign. I have a lot of friends. You know, that's something that's a risk that you take, but it's more valuable is the political experience, right? Not so much if you're, it's a bonus if your boss wins, right? But more than that, it's more you get that political experience and you get that credit, right? For the next politician you want to work for, right? And that's very important. And just like in any job, reputation and experience is very important. So at least you get that. And the second part is how I did it. I actually interned in the current elected office, and that's another way where you prove your efforts, you do good, you know, working for free. And in my case, I was still in law school at the time, so I was a law clerk for the city of LA. I just chose the city because that's where I wanted to work, you know. So I worked for the city attorney's office, and the city attorney happened to be running for mayor. And who won? James Hahn, right? So I ended up working for the mayor. So the internship led to a job in the mayor's office, but I had to fight for that, you know, prove your worth. So that's how I got in.
Okay. So like, I think some people might have different theories about working programs. So what are some of the things that, you know, people might not know about working for the mayor's office or just public service in general?
Well, I think people sometimes, the reason why we don't have too many folks get into public office compared to other industries like business and marketing is the long hours, you know, and, you know, the pay's not pretty low compared to other careers. Not surprising, you know, and don't want to stereotype. I don't know if it's stereotype, but, you know, the focus on making a lot of money, right? So, and so that's one of the things that people don't expect is, wow, it's a lot of hours, right? And for little pay, right? And they don't pay overtime. It's government, right? So that's the other thing. And the other part is things you don't expect, or more of the positive parts is that, yes, you may not make enough compared to your friends in different careers, but you will have such a great network where you will not have to fight tooth and nail for a job in the private sector, as we call it, the regular jobs. For case in point, you know, when you're working long hours in the evenings, people want your card, your business card, not because they want to know you personally, maybe some of the case, but they want to know your boss. So when you work for the mayor's office, I want to get to know access to the mayor or access to the governor. And working for Governor Schwarzenegger, that was crazy because everybody just wanted the card that has Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know? You know, I'm sure they keep it for souvenirs, gold embossed and everything. Not real gold, guys. So. But yeah, so that's something that we're able to and I've said this before, where government is one of the few types of industries where it regulates everything, right? So the way at least for the Southern California area is, and this is pretty much I would define for cities all over the world, that we live in a very siloed society, right? Like churches don't mingle with nightclubs,
Right.
Or, you know, that's an extreme example, but different industries network with each other, right? I mean, how many bar associations, they always network with each other, right? Do they mingle with the doctors? Not so much, because there's not similarities, except, of course, in lawsuits. Of course, you know, there's chiropractors and lawyers, you know, great relationship, right, for car accidents. You know? I mean, besides that, but really what I've learned that it was surprising for me is like, wow, these guys don't talk to each other. But me as a government official representing one have access to much all this groups. So I have a ton of business cards, right? And you know, we live in the age of emails, right? Or now social media too. But when I worked for any elected office, you know, people don't know the difference between what the federal government does besides, or what the state of California does, county, city, and then mix and match, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Americans have done a poor job in educating our citizenry about, you know, the different functions of government.
Right, right.
That's one of my arguments to really focus on is how much government really affects us, right? People think, oh, only when I have to complain, I go on City Hall and stuff.
Right.
You know, people protesting immigration and go to City Hall. It's like, no, guys, you have to go to the federal building. Right? I mean, well, you know, I mean, they mean well, maybe because the city of LA is so iconic and they go there. But, you know, I tell people, you know what? You know, because when people call me for issues, like, you know, being the Asian American liaison kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, can you tell the mayor I need help with my immigration papers? Like, well, you need to talk to your Congress member, right?
Yeah.
And instead of like just giving a number, you know, I always tell people you have to give good public service, right?
Right, right.
Get their information, even though it's not my responsibility. I will collect the person's name, phone number, you know, email, and do hand holding. We call it Nordstrom style service, right?
Right.
Guide him along. Don't just like go online, find out who your congressman is. I'm too busy. No, I would never do that. Always guide him, right? Ultimately, the customer service helps out the reputation of the office, you know, from a selfish point of view, but also you're helping out your local citizenry by educating them. Oh, by the way, let me tell you, if you have issue with immigration, you call congressperson. If you have issue with potholes, you call your city, right? Sometimes county, but you know, but you give them you give that opportunity. So that was another learning lesson. Was I was actually able to educate people, right? Pierce through those silos, right? Help people connect. And I'd say 2/3 of my emails had nothing to do with the personnel, the elected office I was working with. Right? It was about help. It's a glorified customer service, right?
Right.
But it's a very important customer service because it encourages every citizen to be more involved and know that if you're not part of the process, you could be blindsided by certain legislation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'll do a quick example with the Korean community. There was legislation that made their dry cleaning machines illegal all of a sudden. But there was a process to that, right? But because I don't know if the actual process was in language, right? Was it all in English? This is back in the 90s, so not too sensitive those days.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, the dry cleaning industry, and people don't know, or you already know that there's a lot of Koreans that own dry cleaners, right? Just like how you have certain ethnic groups dominate certain sectors, right? In the South Asian community, they have convenience stores or motels, and that's not a stereotype. That's actually true. Where you have more than 50% of motels operated by South Asians, right? Things like that, and the things that's happened with the dry cleaning. All of a sudden, they couldn't use those machines.
Right.
Like, oh my God! And they ended up going backwards, hiring an attorney, and going to express their voice, marching on the air quality management district that made that decision, right? It's like, whoa, see, you have to you have to be a nail that sticks out, right? To get your voice heard. So the learning lesson for the Korean community, that you need to protest. You need to but protest is a last resort, right? You have to be involved. You have to be elected. That's the best way to do it, right? Run for office, or at least go to city hall meetings, not every night, but at least have people that are part of it, and I'm so glad that our young Gen Z and millennial population, they're more active politically among Asian Americans, right? Especially that they're more involved, they're more giving, right? Because I think it's because of the internet. They grew up around the internet. It's very easy to share commonality views, where when I grew up, there were only 4 television channels, and the only way to connect is through, going to meetings or, but I couldn't connect anyone globally, right? I mean, we take that for granted now, but back then, I was like, wow, this is before AOL. You know, not using myself, but when American Online came out, that was amazing. Oh my God, these chat rooms. But it was random, you know. It was kind of funny. So,
Yeah.
but those are the things that I've learned that surprised me. You know, I mean, I have so many examples, but just wanted to share a few of those. You know.
Yeah. No, I think you make a good point. Is like, you know, some people view as the government works for the people, but the other side of the equation is that, you know, you got to be active, you got to be knowledgeable about what's going on, to be an active citizen, so you can, exactly, you're right, so you're not blindsided about things coming down the pipeline, and then you are proactive in making your city, making your state, making your country,
Yeah,
you know, better.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you and I know this because we're both chamber members for the Vietnamese chamber, and you know, it's hard to just do it yourself. You need to
Right.
join groups that
Mhm.
already have people like-minded leaders, like our Vietnamese chamber board, and you know, you're highly networked too, and I'm involved with like 10 other groups too as well, but it's a bit different, different specialties, right? Educational or industry, different specific groups. But a chamber of commerce is always, I always encourage, whether it's our group or, you know, a city chamber, to get to know the business leaders, because you need partnerships with the you know, the triangulation, I call it. You have the business groups, right? You that represent small businesses and big businesses that end up paying the taxes for government, right? So government, need to get to know the government. That's the one I'm specializing in. And then, of course, the nonprofit ones that get funded a lot by the government and private sector. So there is a big triangle that people have to understand, you know, and from the politics wise, you know, as a nonpartisan person, I try to explain to people, like, it's okay to be passionate about representing, you know, business rights and government rights, but also representing the, you know, underserved through social justice. You know, they're all play a part in this puzzle, and you have to, you know, this is democracy. You have to advocate in your representation, right? So it's a push and pull, right? And I tell people, you know, some folks don't try to pull me in a certain direction just to like attack, you know, big business, small business evil, or I have to go on the big business side. Oh man, these nonprofits, what do they do? They all use, like, you know, take free money and stuff. You know, and government. Oh, I don't even trust government. They're corrupt. There's bad apples in every group, right?
Yeah.
And you have to work with all three, and just realize that's always look at the big picture. Right. I mentor my young folks going into government. You know, always take the big picture approach to things when you're working with the public, and to educate them. Right. Not only to know which office to call if they have any problems, but also to understand that there's advocates and you have to listen to them. Don't talk too much. Just listen to what they have to say, and then see where they are in that matrix that I said, right? And to give the opportunity to educate them. You know what? You know, this is not evil. And nonprofits aren't wasteful and corrupt. Government is your friend if you actually know with the right people.
Right.
And even, you know, you could even oust elected officials. And I know that because I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger. How did he get in the office? Yeah, he was elected, but what happened with the prior guy? Yeah. The prior governor was ousted, and that was the first time in history, because he made some say mistake by not being a great governor, and people were so angry that they voted him out. You know, he just got elected, Governor Gray Davis, and he's a good man. It's just the process, and we live in a wonderful country that allows us, because we are a government. You know, you heard the saying, for the people, by the people. We are the government. It's not them, right? Right. So we have a choice to remove people out of office. Yeah. So there's so many different ways to, as doing Three Kings Public Affairs, like people like myself that have this experience in working for elected officials, being on nonprofit boards, having my own small business, and through my family business as well in the restaurant industry. It's having a big picture approach. Okay. So be that director. You know, you could be you could be an actor at the times to advocate for your board, right? But you always try to have that big picture approach of also directing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're not
Yeah.
stuck in that view like, okay, I'm an advocate, but let me look back and see. That's called strategy. The strategy
Right.
means that you have to know where you're at now and see what are the different possibilities in the future, and know where you're at on that chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
Are you being played, right?
Mm.
Are you playing someone else, right?
Yeah.
For the good or bad, right? And that's what a role of an advisor is when you're working for the office, and that's what I do. And it's like going looking at that fortune, the crystal ball,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not going to like doing a psychic thing. You actually look at the trend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like let's say the energy world. Obviously now, with the popularity of solar and alternative wind, it's getting cheaper. Oil and gas,
Mm-hmm.
the environmental movement against certain types of, extracting energy out of the ground,
Yeah.
as a finite source, it's changing,
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your transition from the mayor's office. I know you did work for Councilman David Ryu for a little bit.
Yeah, for a couple years.
For a couple years, and you moved on to the SoCal Gas, right? In the
yes, energy.
kind of government affairs, and that company itself is kind of quasi-government.
Yes, it is. They're quasi-government.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that transition, your work at and then your work at the gas company and the work over there.
Sure. So that's like midstream. So after working in the interesting thing, or something I forgot to mention, is the unexpected things or expected things is you're working most of these political offices have term limits. So if you're looking for job stability, this ain't it.
No.
But at least you might end. So in the governor's office, we're term limited to 8 years, right? Mm-hmm. But because we took over someone else's office, we got in. So it's minus 1 year, mm-hmm. right? So at 7 years, and the 8th year was approaching. I mean, the second term, and you have to start interviewing. Yeah. Not right at the last day, but several months beforehand. Mm-hmm. See, to land on somewhere, have a soft landing instead of a abrupt ending, right?
Right.
And I interviewed for different companies, and I was going to think about going to New York to work for NBC, Universal. Mm-hmm. They wanted to recruit me, but ultimately I needed to stay here locally with my family and have family business responsibilities. So ultimately it's SoCal Gas, because as far as a career advice, I used to tell people, I alluded to before, when you're working in government, you get to know everybody, right? And they know you're a helpful person. You can develop a reputation. And I had enough people working at the gas company that wanted me to work for them, right? So I had like 8 or 9 people, vouching for me, as opposed to just being a resume, right? Mm-hmm. Where no one knows you. Your chances of getting hired, even getting an interview, are pretty low. Mm-hmm. But at least when you know people, you get an interview, right? And you have to prove yourself and how you share your experience. And it was a great opportunity to, I was only out of a job for a month and a half before mm-hmm. they hired me. After like 3 interviews, pretty grueling, but got the job and hit the ground running. And it was, like you said, it was quasi-government. Why public utilities are energy utilities, quasi-utility, or quasi-government? It's because they're highly regulated. Like the gas company, if you don't know, or the energy company, whether you live in LA, well, let's just say you live in Orange County, so Southern California Edison, right? That's your electric company. Mm-hmm. Those are private companies, but highly regulated by the state of California Public Utilities Commission. Too much information, but that's basically an agency where they're in exchange of being a monopoly. Right. So why is there only one gas company or one electric company? That's because they agreed to be highly regulated to make sure that they're not gouging you. Right. So every few years they have to prove the price, justify the price they're charging to their customers. Right. And usually they do this all algorithm things. Like if there was competition, you'd be charging at the right rate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's something that I had to learn, right? And
Mhm.
it was a great experience to work in a corporation, but also being that bridge with the government,
Mhm.
with the other elected officials, to help them out, because even though they're quasi government, excuse me, even though they're quasi government, they also have to have relationships with other government agencies, right? So it's a quasi state government, but they hire people like us, right? And this associates to all different industries. Like a lot of big businesses hire assistants to be community representatives, but also government liaisons. Like, what's the purpose of you guys? All you do is go to parties and events and stuff. Well, that's part of it, but what's the difference between lawyers going to parties or attorneys or or doctors or construction? They have these seminars, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they are, right? But we're working there because they're asking so many questions about or complaining to you about their issues, right?
Right.
And you have to process those things. So it's not fun and games.
Yeah.
Most of our meetings are not events. They're actually just meetings, endless meetings to hear from the communities or the different trade groups, the unions, the chambers. Like you have to be constantly on at least 8 hours a day and night, early morning, and do that. So it was the same thing in working for the gas company, where I have to explain about natural gas, talk about the energy efficiencies, ways to save money, but also helping the company out when they have been running into problems with, when you have the mayors trying saying, why are you causing traffic in the streets? Because you're digging in the ground and our pipes. And I say politely, hey, you know what? It's our job as a quasi-government agency to keep our customers safe, right? That includes your citizens. We're digging in the streets because we're trying to make sure that the pipeline, the high pressure pipeline, does not explode. It's regular maintenance, right? And then we quietly have to educate some of the, especially newly elected officials. Sometimes like how it is, and because just because your citizens, your residents complain that the gas company or Edison is causing traffic, right? There's a reason for it. And then you help them out. Say, hey, let me help you out. Let me help you. Help you.
Help me help
Right?
you.
Yeah. And next time, you know what? We're gonna make sure that we talk with your public works director to make sure that we give people notice ahead of time, flyers. That's why you see all those electronic signs saying construction coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Prepare, right? Don't take the street if you don't want to be delayed. So it's a very mature process. It's actually a communication skill to also a communication opportunity to speak to local elected offices of how to do this. So it's really about being the cooler and facilitating communication between a utility and a local government.
Yeah.
And then, and that's a skill I already developed from working for elected officials. That's why people hire people like us that have, you go to endless town hall meetings and all you can take on, you have to have a thick skin because they will yell at you sometimes. And you have to deal with that. And your job is to cool the situation down. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's a great skill for anyone to use to any industry. It applies all across the board, even as a fellow chamber board member, right? It's great because we're always interacting with government officials, right? And to understand how they think.
Right.
So if you already know what they want, it's a much easier conversation, right? Right. So as opposed to, I wonder what that person wants. Oh, they're so corrupt, right? Yeah, it's very not wise to jump to conclusions, right?
Right.
J to C, right? Jump to conclusions.
So
always listen.
Right. I think.
So
Well, I was going to say, it seems like the common thread from your time at the mayor's office and to the gas company is like 80% listening and 20% everything else, right? So.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think that's probably the traits of a good communicator or business person or whatever. It's like listening most of the time and then using that information to communicate more effectively or do whatever you need to do more effectively as part of service delivery or customer service or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
So,
and then oh, sorry, I forgot to add.
yeah.
There was also working with managing employees.
Mm-hmm.
I had to do employee engagement, making sure that employees volunteer at community events.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did funding, corporate philanthropy, giving advice of where to fund underserved communities with 1% of our profits to give back. And that was a great experience in how the philanthropy works, right?
Mm.
And working with people that give back as well. So that was a great experience.
Okay, so let's move on from a gas company, and you open your company, Three Kings Public Affairs.
Yes.
Tell us, share a little bit about when someone comes to you and need help from you, what can you do for them?
Well, as my dog started staring at me, he's like, "What are you talking to? Who are you talking to?" Well, a lot of the purpose of the company for Three Kings, the name itself, Three Kings, is about sacrifice. It's actually very biblical. My parents are coming in. I'm doing a podcast right now.
안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. Yeah, podcast interview. Anyways, so sorry, explain that. The Three Kings, I chose that name because it kind of related to public affairs, where it was, as you know, the nativity scene with as a Christian Catholic, Jesus Christ being born, and the king sent advisors, right, which were the Three Kings. So, and I've always been advising people, right? Not so much the birth of a savior, but I can be your savior for your business. The purpose I alluded to before was that vacuum. I've noticed there was not enough connectors between the different. Remember the triangulation, the governments,
right?
The nonprofits, the non-government organizations, and then you have businesses, right? Especially in the Asian and Pacific Islander community, I didn't see enough of that, right? To advocate to connect the three, because they're always either competing with each other or intra-government fighting, or even nonprofits fighting, because of, when you have a lot of egos, you're gonna have intrapersonal issues, of course. Just like a family. Yeah. Have you heard of a family that all get along? No.
That family does not exist.
Oh my God. Yeah, maybe even Brady Bunch had some issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
But every television family always had conflicts. But that imitates real life.
Yeah.
And through that, it was a way to do advocacy work, and also, it's a business too. So I can't just do this for free. I would love to. Yeah. In fact, that's my goal, was to do this type of work, as a free service. But until then, I still have to make money. I have to pay taxes. I have to contribute to society, right? To help be part of this triangle. And that's what the purpose is. I've done this for a few years, and it's been great. It's not one of exactly the most financially secure ways of living, but that's what a startup is. You move up, right? And build relationships. And what I learned is the branding part. People have always been branded as a government person, right? Like, oh, I've never asked for money, unless I'm corrupt, but I'm not. Just doing that and building new relationships, rebranding, and staying involved with the nonprofits I've always been part of too. The Vietnamese Chamber, I've been there since the gas company days, 8 years plus. And they said, "Hey, I'm not working for the company anymore because you don't need me." I said, no, we need your advice. So, okay, well, I'll stay there. And don't mind paying the board dues, because did I pay my board dues here? I might have to pay my board dues. But that's the thing. We live in a capitalist society. We have to contribute, right? To receive the benefits, to even continue to give back. I have to pay for that, ironically, but I know that all things come back, right? Yeah. So that's important for people that work in the public affairs business, building connections. Our most recent contract is with the city of LA, through another contractor, to help communication, to do outreach, to educate the Asian and Pacific Islander communities about this big opportunity to do, how they have food trucks out there,
Yeah.
Before food trucks weren't legal
Yeah.
or limited, but now you have these sidewalk, carts, just like I have in Chicago, New York, selling hot dogs. They're pretty big carts. And that's a new opportunity in the city of Los Angeles boundaries to do business.
Yeah.
Right. But they need to tell the people about it. Right.
Yeah.
So it may sound simple, but it's a very grassroots process to engage with the ethnic media, like talking to the Vietnamese, the Koreans, the Chinese media. Hey, there's this opportunity here. Invite the different chambers, which I'll invite the Vietnamese chamber, of course, even though it's in LA, but it's something that you could do business in LA, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's an example of what I do as public affairs, getting involved in the affairs of government, right? That's what public is. Public means government.
Yeah.
And affairs of what they're doing, trying to interact with the community. Just like how you have, the B2B is the most common thing, right? Business to business, business to consumer, B2C. But there's also another group that doesn't get talked about too much is G2C, government to community, right? So that's my thing. So it's in the world of business and strategy, why do you want to go to one that's also so competitive in the business world? Not many people do G2C, right? So,
I know we talked a little bit about that. So would you, in the last conversation, but would you say the G2C is like your sweet spot? Would you say, hey man, if you got to talk to Alex about one thing, you got to talk to Alex if you need this?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a sweet spot because, well, the plus is not many folks do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that people don't have those relationships as I do, right? And there's a lot of people that know politicians, but you're in government, you can't do that. Make money from it, in other words, because that's your role. You're being paid for that. Or in the business world, and you don't have that common collegiality with that politician or agency. It doesn't have to be political offices. It could be the water board. It could be the gas company. It could be Edison. It could be telecommunications. They have government affairs people in those, and I have those relationships, right?
Right.
And the downside is, do people want to pay for that? It's like, oh, you're my buddy. Come on, let's help a brother out, or help a sister out. And that's the only hard part is, like I said, I was branded as government free service, but now it's like, well, this takes actually a lot of my time, and like, help a brother out.
yeah.
Right. And because it's not as common among small to medium businesses to do this, but it's more common for big governments to pay for it. But it may be, especially in international businesses, they don't understand the role of a lobbyist or people like myself, a consultant that makes those connections. In the end, they're gonna make money. I'm gonna get a small piece of it.
Yeah.
So it's a more of an education thing, but I'm learning that people just sometimes don't want to pay, but they don't have to say decline. I'll give them like a little help, but
yeah. And I think where maybe a lot of your value will come in is like you're speeding up the process, right? So those particular business owners or whoever that's hiring you, like they can do what you do. They just need to spend 10, 20 years building up those relationships and build the trust over those times of years.
Oh yeah.
Really? I mean, you're just really accelerating the process here.
Yes. And as you know, in business, time is money.
Time is money.
Time is a lot of money.
I've one of the best things I've done recently is like focus on revenue generating opportunities. And, I've hired some assistants recently. So I'm like, hey, go research this for me. I need new supplies to the office. Just find out where the cheapest things is and then just go buy it. Cause I don't have time to do this.
Exactly. It's like the reason why, let's say in your field, in the attorney world, where a lot of it, why do attorneys hire paralegals? Right. Because it's like a lot of grunt work. That takes a lot of time. I mean, you're busy defending your client, right? And you got to go to court, but who's doing all the other rest of the work for your other cases?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like, I'm one of those paralegals, think of it that way, for businesses that are having issues with government, right? And I could be the sole paralegal, right? Just doing that stuff while they're doing regular work, business work. And I'm the one that's like, hey, let me just work on this, right? Because if you don't get support from this agency, why even working to even try to get access to either the government work, or if they're not issuing a permit, just basic things like that. Or you just want to get to know the person, so in the future, when you have an issue, right,
Yeah.
you'll know that person,
Yeah.
and I'll facilitate for you,
Yeah.
So it's not the way to say I'm greasing the oil. I mean, oiling the machinery.
Yeah.
Well, you need people to physically add the oil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just for businesses; it's also for nonprofits to fight for, the rights
Funding.
for people. Like, why isn't there a law, right, to support? There was actually, for example, for domestic violence, right, or for child trafficking, sex trafficking. There was no law for it, and you had nonprofit works that had to advocate politicians. Hey, we need a law to make this illegal. There's a federal law, but there was no state law or LA city or LA county.
Right.
We're the government agencies. We could make laws because we're demanding them, right?
Yeah.
So that's very important.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit real quick about you mentioned social media earlier in the interview, and you had a partner in this new kind of social media thing on Facebook called Asians in LA. So talk really quick about this thing you guys do, and kind of how you guys came up with the idea, and then kind of the purpose and what you guys want to achieve with this particular.
Sure. That's like, actually before that actually started, I was always very active on social media myself, and I wanted to do something that was instead of having a web page for it's a social activism, or kind of like a community bulletin board of all the events coming up, make it maybe into a more of a active format. So I teamed up with another partner to do something, right, and using my network and combining the networks to have this Asian LA. I'm not as active in it being in on camera, but it's more importantly, it's more about posting activities coming up. Like just before this podcast, I was posting an event I saw on social media, 3 different congressional members, right? And I think you liked it too.
Yeah.
They're having a community town hall where you have the ambassador to the U.S. ambassador to Vietnam to talk about what's going on, right? And then it's happening next week, and you share that, and then people get shared and sharing and sharing, because it's a free forum. Get to know your local federal officials, right? That not only your 3 congressional representatives that are also representing Little Saigon, right? But also to make them ask what's going on internationally, right? And they're dealing with the sensitive issues between the different generations, between the first and second and third, about the perception of what Vietnam is. Is it still your country? Americans are already there making money. Why can't the next generation also be part of it, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of issues, right? Because family, communism, all the issues that come up. Korean American, I would understand that, because we have a brother from the North Korea, always lobbing missiles down, right? And he's very proactive. So there's something where the local community can understand. And then you don't have to be Vietnamese or Asian. It's just you live there and you have a large presence of Vietnamese American. Let's learn about the issues together, right? So that's a good example of why this channel exists, Asians in LA. I also help out. I'm different parts of other networks too, on Facebook and LinkedIn. Big believer in LinkedIn, man. As far as a career person, LinkedIn is a good example where you're constantly, if you want to receive, you need to give, right? I'm always posting articles from my specialty, about leadership, right? Self-development, mental health issues, because I used to be a mental health commissioner, right? Because that's key right now. The reason why people are in record numbers still taking opiates to quell their depression, their pains. Why is it that cannabis is being legalized everywhere, right? I thought cigarettes were good enough. It's part of this because of mental health. It's like the stresses of, ironically, social media. Modern society, there's a cost to be connected. There's people that are not so good out there that make stupid comments, right? Attacking people, and
Mm-hmm.
People that are not prepared to deal with people that are very, let's say, not mentally sound to attack people,
Mm-hmm.
complete strangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people that take it personally, that affects their mind,
Yeah.
right? You know, not everyone is going to be having a thick skin, right?
Right.
So, but by sharing events where people could learn together, like these community town halls, it's happening tomorrow, next week. And people that have an interest in Asian American culture, or they want to get to know, to do business in Asia, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they want to know about Parasite, what's going on there, right? I mean, can you believe it? This is history.
It was a good movie.
Very opportune time, because it's all about Asian and Asian American empowerment, right? That we are entering this global phase where, at least in the role of entertainment, that Hollywood is known to be very myopic, right? It's never been really a global award stage, right?
Right.
That's what Cannes Film Festival is about and all this, but it's transforming society as one growing minority group that used to be always in the alleyways in terms of politics. Now we're becoming more involved. Like I mentioned about the City Hall, there's 2 out of 15 seats being Asian Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You have the BTS, right? I mean, this is like, wow, I never expect the Koreans to take a certain lead, because before it was Hong Kong or Japanese manga, right? There's different specific ones.
Mm-hmm.
But you're having BTS involved, and the K-pop being more popular than the Beatles in terms of numbers, right? And the Parasite winning 4 Oscars, all the big ones. I mean, for me, that was a shocking thing to see, but also, wow, this is like, it's a changing world, and it's now, it's like, wow, we're proud to be Asian. Before I wasn't, because we never saw people with faces like ourselves on that. You know, speaking as a minority group, that's a good symbol. Even I had so many of my mainstream non-Korean friends congratulating me. Like, I had nothing to do with the movie.
On behalf of all Korean people, thank you, right?
I go, see, that symbolizes, and then I've heard this from my other Korean friends. Like, oh, so many of my non-Korean friends like thanking me. It's like, what the heck? But it shows how, whether we like it or not, we are also branded by just being our certain ethnic group.
Right.
Well, because of me, you know, I've always been proud about being Korean American for many years. Of course, when they saw that Parasite was a Korean movie, they go, wow, that's great. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. And it's a learning lesson for all of us, you know, listening to this podcast and your audience, that don't be afraid to embrace your own ethnicity, your own culture, your beliefs, right? Your political beliefs. Nowadays it's kind of dangerous, but at least your faith, because we're in a country that promotes, you know, freedom of expression. We're protected, right? We have freedom of speech, and that could be used as an advantage from a business standpoint, to get to know that culture. You could be the expert of, for me, Korean businesses, right?
Right.
Koreans in government, right? That's how you brand yourself. Or if you're not taking advantage of it, do it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, use it as a feather in your cap. You can have many feathers, right?
Right.
Mainstream too as well. But people, I don't want to be pigeonholed into being just an Asian American or a lawyer or a doctor. It's like, no, I'm not saying to be pigeonholed. You're going to be a well-networked person, right? To be that. So I use Parasite as an example, because it also behooves us as if you're a minority group, right, such as being Korean or Asian American or Persian, it could be, you know, Russian or something, where we live in a global world, right? Make those connections. So if people assume that they're congratulating me because of Parasite, but I'm not Korean, I'm Korean American, right? Of course, ethnic Korean, yes, but maybe I should, if I wasn't connected to Korea, I should, right? Why shouldn't I be afraid to interact with the consulate general's office or the ambassador that represents Korea, right? It's only going to benefit me professionally, right?
Right.
And also personally, right?
Yeah.
Imagine me, you know, because I'm connected with the Korean government through the consulate office here, they invite me to tons of, you know, meetings dealing with businesses from Korea, Like this morning before the podcast, this morning I was with the Korean International Trading Association, right? With a water purification company that wants to do business in government, and I might play a role in that. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
because they're having a hard time.
And then I think just that meeting is brings you kind of full circle, right, as to your public sector service.
Yeah.
And now you're Three Kings. And then with that, we're kind of at the end of the time, so I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Just answer the first thing that comes in your head. All right.
Sure.
Who do you look up most to?
Wow, I look up to actually Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Because he opened up the rights for civil rights for all of us.
All right. What's the best business book you've ever read?
Wow. Peter Drucker, the author. I forgot the name of the book. But he's the reason why he's the father of efficiency in business. Mm-hmm. It's the reason why Japanese cars are so efficient because of Peter Drucker at a cheap cost.
And if you could do one thing over again, what would it be?
I would have not wasted my time on being a bio major and go political science full and not go to law school.
And then what's the biggest challenge in your business today?
Ooh. The biggest challenge in my business is not understanding what I do. Public affairs, you need that oil to get the job done. It takes experts, relationships, and people don't understand that you need folks like myself to really reduce the time to get your business. So
maybe you're not so much the oil, but you're like the gas on the fire.
Oh yes, I'm this is called positive gaslighting, right?
Okay, positive. Okay, yes, gaslighting. All right. Hey, Alex, thanks again for your time here. Love talking to you today. So, if we want to learn more about what you do, where can we find you?
Well, I do have a website. You could Google it, but Three Kings Public Affairs. But the number www.3, like the number 3, or like this 3.
Okay.
Kings, that's as opposite of the Queens. PA.com. So 3KingsPA.com. So, and I can be reached on Twitter at Alexander the Kim.
The Kim. All right.
Like Alexander the Great.
All right. Thanks, Alex, again. And, I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dan.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.